And the year started off with a little 14-month-old orphaned yearling in March of 2007. And the yearling had been picked up from a wildlife rehabilitator. I don't know the background story as to why the wildlife rehabilitator, if that person found it or someone else found it and took it to the rehabilitator who contacted the authorities, but it was picked up in Unicoi County, and she weighed about 16 pounds. And sadly, she was only here about 3 months, and there was a terrible storm and just a very freak accident, believed to have been struck by lightning, and she died. So that was a very sad start to the beginning of the year for our curator at the time, which was Lisa Stewart. And I remember when I first started following ABR, and that wasn't till about late 2008, beginning of 2009, I remember hearing about this bear and hearing that story. So starting off the year kind of on a sad note, and that happens here in rescue, any kind of animal rescue, you have those sad stories. But this little bear was bear number 80, and her name was Jewel, and as I said, a 14-month-old yearling. The next bear that came in was in May, and this was bear number 81, and a 3-month-old cub that weighed less than 10 pounds, orphaned in Arkansas, and was nicknamed Rocky. And Rocky and another bear that would be at the facility you'll hear about, Beauregard, arrived at the same on the same day. And one of the things that was in Lisa's notes, Lisa did a lot of newsletters at the time, and that was back before the day that we could reach a lot of people through computer and, of course, Facebook. So she did mail out newsletters. And so some of the notes in her newsletters were that when she put the cubs together in the pen, they grabbed each other like in a tight bear hug and immediately fell to the ground, just rolling around and playing and wrestling as if they were siblings, just automatically. So those two were big buddies while they were here at ABR. And Rocky weighed 136 pounds at his release in November of 2007. So going from 10 pounds in May to 136 in November. And the picture that you see, which is the only one we have in his file, is another bear, bear number 83, you'll hear about in a moment, who was also from Arkansas, and they were released together. And one of the things that was noted from the officer who transported Rocky and bear number 83, Precious Little Miracle, had in his notes that the cubs were just spitting and blowing and fussing while they were contained in the bear boxes all the way to Arkansas. And as soon as the boxes were opened, the cubs bolted out and ran for the woods. Bear number 83 ran down a ridge and out of sight. And Rocky started to climb a tree, but then decided to cross the trail and follow number 83, Miracle. And Arkansas was very pleased with their progress. So Rocky and Miracle, even though we started off the year with a little cub that didn't make it with bear number 80, Rocky was a success story and was successfully released back to the wild. Bear number 82 came in, as I said, on the same day as 81. And this was a 4-month-old, 12-pound cub that was confiscated in South Carolina. It seems like in a lot of the back years, you notice we've had a theme of people illegally possessing bear cubs. Thankfully, we don't hear about that as much anymore. So hopefully the laws have changed, or since I've been here, we haven't had as much as what we've seen in ABR's history back in the beginning. We've had several stories where people get a bear cub and think they can raise it. Well, it doesn't take long to realize that's a big mistake. But South Carolina confiscated this little cub. And as I said, he and bear number 81, Rocky, were big buddies while they were here at ABR. and he was released back to South Carolina. So even though he had been illegally possessed by a human, not long enough to have caused damage enough that he wasn't releasable, but he was successfully released back to South Carolina, weighing a healthy 126 pounds, and that was in November of 2007. And so this is a picture of number 82, Beauregard. He's I don't know if that's just the facial expression or how he's sitting, but a very unusual looking little bear there, Beauregard. And then bear number 83, there's a lot written in Lisa's notes about this little bear. She was an orphan cub, or he, excuse me, it was a he. I always want to call it a she because it's Precious Little Miracle is the name that she gave him, but it was a little male. Little orphan cub from Arkansas, 5 months old, and this was in June, about mid-June, and this little cub only weighed 5 pounds, extremely dangerously underweight at that time of year. And with a lot of specialized care and a proper diet, he did recover. But there's a lot that Lisa wrote about this bear and in taking care of it. And she shared that how just dangerously underweight that the bear was. And I think the way he came to be found was in Arkansas, some fishermen saw a bear cub up in a tree. And they watched and watched, and hours went by, and they didn't see a sow return. So they called the wildlife biologist, whose name was Rick Eastridge in Arkansas, and he got the bear, and it was sick and starving. And as I said, weighed only 5 pounds, and his eyes were matted shut. So the wildlife officer cleaned up his eyes and got him up here to Tennessee to ABR, where Lisa took care of the little male. And he had to have a lot of special care. In her notes, she mentioned that he was too weak to eat, and so there had to be a little more hands-on care than we like to do, and sometimes that's necessary. We try to be hands-off as much as possible, but particularly at June. This is a 5-month-old cub, so that is one that we would typically be very hands-off, and so we're always concerned when we have to be up close and personal with a cub of that age, just to cause habituation or food conditioning, and that was a concern she had as well. But she gave him a little teddy bear that she named Buddy, and you can see the picture here of him with his little bear. And because he was too small and too weak to be with the other bears. And she talked about how he adopted Buddy right away and took it into his little house, covered it with straw. And she thought maybe he was trying to feed Buddy because she would find that the teddy bear was covered in formula and berries on it, and his ears full of apple chunks. And but that he was really close to his stuffed animal, was a lot of company to him. And she had also talked about, there's a part in a newsletter here that I do want to read to you what she wrote, because she was talking about the specialized care that she had to give to Precious Little Miracle, and how wonderful it was to see his tiny little battered body grow and become healthy. And at that time in 2007, Lisa made the comment in her newsletter that this little bear was the worst she had seen to date. And he grew into a big miracle for her to watch. And so she was very relieved that the close interaction and up close and personal care she had to give this little bear was a benefit and not a detriment. In other words, he didn't become habituated or food conditioned and was able to be successfully released. And I thought that was, nice to read those words that she mentioned, and also that concern, because she goes on to talk about, how that with wild animals, when there has to be intervention by a human, that can be a curse. And so that's why we try to be very hands off and with all the bears, because we don't want to do anything to that would result in them not being able to be released back to the wild. They're a wild animal. We want them to stay a wild animal. So it's never our goal to have a bear that we have to place in a zoo or sanctuary or somewhere like that. That's not the goal. Our goal is solely to get them back to the wild. So we have to be very careful in the things we do in order to get these bears back to the wild.